listening to Inclusive AF with Jackye Clayton and Katee Van Horn.
Hello. This is Katee Van Horn with the
And
Inclusive. Oh,
yes,
you. Me first. This is Katee Van Horn with the Inclusive AF podcast. What's your name,
my
Missy?
my my name is Jackye. Do you want to be friends?
Let's.
Yay! Because
Hi.
today, just
Wait.
to make it really friendly, we're going to talk about a fun, pressing issue: the two recent executive orders from President. Oh, we're not supposed to. We weren't going to do that from today's administration that has significantly impacted diversity, equity, and inclusion, commonly known as DEI initiatives across various sectors. This would include the two, namely, which ones are, what are they called? What numbers are they? And does it matter?
They're crazy number one and crazy number two is what I call them.
No, Executive Order 14151, titled Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing, and Executive Order 14173, entitled Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity.
Yep, merit-based opportunities, people. Meritocracy it is. That's what we're really going to
Isn't
focus.
that a bad word, Katie?
No, it's a great word if it's actually translated correctly, but alas, we know it's
Oh.
maybe not so much done. This is the thing. It's like these orders are obviously going to lead to some substantial changes and, concern, confusion, of course. That's, we've talked about the confusion of all of the executive orders, and even just talking about this, it's like, wait, how many executive orders are there focused on DEI? Okay, it's only two, but it feels like there's 100.
It feels like a million, and because it is like 1417778, whatever.
Polly Wolly do all day. It's just making up numbers now. And so what I would love to do, Jackye, today, if you're open to it, because I know you're open to a lot of things because you're a giver, but if you're open to it, would like to talk about what this means and what we can actually do about it, how we can, help and support those folks that are directly impacted by these changes and, this wonderful disruption in the work that so many of us have been doing.
I think part of it is that the whole time we were saying maybe this isn't going to be a great time because we've gone through this before. All presidents, once they take office, sign a bunch of executive orders. None so blatant and direct. Usually it's among party lines, things that they've campaigned against, things that we said. And I think part of the reason that this is so chaotic is because over and over we keep hearing people saying, I know that he said that, but I didn't believe he was really going to do it. And so just to let everybody know what we're talking about in a little bit more detail, I think we should briefly outline what these executive orders entail. So in January 2025, Trump issued orders aimed at terminating DEI programs within federal agencies, as well as influencing private sector practices. The administration's stated purpose is to end illegal discrimination, which is interesting because did you notice at all, like not to be crazy, but did you notice that especially the group that have been put into office doesn't look very diverse, nor have the merit to be in the positions in the first place? Just saying.
Wait, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about the guy that was our new like Homeland Security guy or whatever? I don't even know what his title is. That's like drinking on stage. Is that like what is that dude's Hagsworth? What is that guy's job even? I don't even know at this point because it's all just made up. It's all just made up
No,
jobs.
I think it was the WWE founder's wife who's never been in education, who's now responsible for the education that we
Yes.
are looking to dismantle. Maybe that one.
No, so this guy, Pete Hegseth, he's the United States Secretary of Defense who was drinking possibly a glass of something, whiskey, bourbon, not sure what, while he was doing a press conference.
The
So
one
that's,
whose mama wrote a letter. It says,
yes. said this isn't a good idea.
If
Yeah.
your mama says it's not good, if your mama's writing letters about
Yeah.
you,
Yeah. I mean, well, I can't agree to that statement because, sometimes my mom does
well,
some that I'm not sure
okay.
about. But anyways, okay, so here's the thing. These orders are really focusing on eliminating the DEI offices in all of the federal governments and positions, programs, all of the things that really we have been focused on in the federal government to really focus about equity related programs, things like contracts. It repeals executive orders designed to ensure equal employment opportunities. Federal contractors are, not required now to prevent discrimination and address employment barriers. And, and what I'm seeing now, and it just happened here in Arizona with the city of Scottsdale, the cities and states are now following suit and dropping DEI offices and dropping DEI programs left and right. And so, it's one of those like, we know it's just going to continue and just get worse. So, I don't know.
Well, one of the things that they did talk about, and those of our millions of fans that have been listening, one of the first things that they went after were ERGs.
Oh, yeah. As they should, because that's always such a bad thing to have
Listen,
people come together.
I don't want to say I told you so. But if you look at these, what was happening, the groups were offered centered around shared characteristics like race or gender, right? Or your sexual orientation. It was like, old women who like cats, ERGs, or, members of LGBTQ or the trans community at work, or all of those things. That's been difficult. They've been limiting participation. Now they're saying that these are the things that are discriminatory. They're trying to disband these or restructure ERGs.
And, and I think this is this is part of that. I now heard, in other words, tsunami of executive orders and changes and things that the government is doing to just keep us in a constant state of, I don't know if terror is the right word.
I was about to say, just to make sure there's no safe place.
No, right.
And no place where you can find like-minded people to have a conversation with.
No, right. And I think that's the part that it's more of this, like, there's no logic or rhyme or reason to what they're saying, but yet people are like, yes, this totally makes sense. That's the part that I'm like, wait, what? Um, I don't know. Okay, so what does this mean for employees? What does this mean for organizations? I think those companies that have federal contracts are probably the most impacted right off the bat because, they have to follow some of these rules and they're having to look at their DEI initiatives, but because if they aren't compliant, they're going to lose government contracts, they're going to lose funding, they're going to lose all kinds of different things, which obviously causes concern amongst employees because it's not just, hey, I value diversity and inclusion in my workplace. It's also people's jobs are going away or they will go away if this happens or that happens or if this doesn't happen. So it's also just the terror that people are feeling around what does this mean if we don't have this in our workplace? What does it mean if we do? So,
well, I mean, the thing that makes me, to be fair, when people always say, oh, it's a equal opportunity offender, like, to be fair, the National Park Service lost over 1,000 workers. The IRS, right before tax season is supposed to be cut. The CDC, the NIH, the EPA gutted nurses, scientists, researchers, all gone in the name of efficiency. It is about cutting protections, eliminating oversight, and shifting the power away from public service. And on top of that, when you're looking, it is disproportionate on who would choose a life of public service within these rules. The who are taking care of our veterans. Where are the people that are going and making those arrangements? And again, I think what has been like sorry not sorry over the weekend are seeing all these people who did vote in that direction who still lost their job, asking for it to be come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't, and this also talks to privilege because sure, I don't, if people were doing it right, the way that it's supposed to be based, it's supposed to be based on your skill and make sure that we're not overlooking people based on, all of these, protected groups,
Mhm.
or things that we should consider,
Right.
then it shouldn't have that big of an impact. But then when you're also firing, I'm sorry about the water, when you're also firing thousands of people on top of it,
Mhm.
now you have all these spaces that are open, that you are going to have to be hired, or are you going to hire? I don't think we know. They fired a bunch of people and then asked for people to come back.
Well, that's the thing. It's more of the, I recently went through a reduction in force for one of my clients. So this was prior to me taking on my new role.
Sure.
The question was asked, like, well, who's going to do this work? And I'm like, that is the most basic question that I'm trying to figure out right now is like, who's going to do this work? Because it's not, the work isn't going away. And, it's how do we actually think about, who do we engage? How do we think about this? And this whole cultural shift and political climate is actually just creating this emboldened state of, yeah, we can challenge everything around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And also, I love that people are saying, don't say DEI, say diversity, equity, inclusion. Say exactly the words of what you
Right.
are opposed to. And I
Right.
think that's part of it too. But this whole, again, we got these stupid comments around, oh, it's reverse discrimination. And so we need to get rid of it. And it's this companies that are saying, no, we're not going to capitulate, we're not going to fold. It's now like, okay, do we have to worry about backlash from the public or from legal ramifications? And yes, I know other companies that have said, yes, we're going to do this and we're going to get rid of DEI are also getting the backlash. So it's just like, again, we're creating more drama, more uncertainty, more fear for all of our team members. And why? So I don't know.
I feel like here's the thing that is very important for people to know that have been paying attention, is that JD Vance is one of the ones that were against it, that who was our vice president, was also benefited because he was admitted into Yale under a program that gave veterans and low income kids scholarships to go to school, right? He is in the position
Wait,
that,
it wasn't based on merit, Jackye. Everything is based
no,
on
I know, wasn't based on merit,
merit.
right? It was because he's a poor kid who got there. And I always say the thing that's frustrating is like, where are the allies looking at the 90% white men saying, that doesn't look very fair and nobody's qualified? Like, you literally have no doctor's degree and you're responsible for like the health of our nation. They're
That has
sending
to be a
people to
separate,
Guantanamo
that has
Bay.
to
We've
be a separate.
never done that. We've never done that as a country. We're doing that now from people from Venezuela.
Right.
Like, it is horrid. I feel like what is difficult is when you're in these situations, they are going to have to hire people eventually. Somebody is going to have to do this work. You and
100%.
I know it is not going to be the high dollar, high educated. Nobody's going to want to touch it who does that with a million-foot pole. And the
No.
people that end up doing it will be people who are the most disenfranchised that have to.
Right. And I think, it goes back to our conversation that we had last week and, the episode that we recorded last week where, it's really okay, what does this actually mean when we talk about some of the legal ramifications? What does this mean when we talk about, what this actually does? So, Scott Curran was on and we talked about a lot of these topics. And I think that's a piece that people need to understand is that a lot of these orders are now going to be challenged from a legal perspective. So reaching out to your internal and external counsel to say, how should we approach this? How should we think about this truly from a legal perspective? Just stay, how do we comply with the law, but also how do we do this in the right way that we're on the right side of history? So, your attorneys will say, here's what you need to do to comply. But then you can also kind of take that one step further and say, okay, but what does that mean then as well for we want to be good corporate citizens, if you will. So
But
yeah,
don't confuse an executive order with a law.
no, right. Agreed.
You
Um,
know, there's so many people that get those things. I think it's unfortunate for those of us that are in the people space because you can't really, you know, it's like, where do you go? Oh, are you supposed to go to SHRM? And we know you can't go to like the Society of Human Resources because they had all of these issues. They were going against DEI and saying, oh, the civil is what was that, civil conversations
oh my God, yes,
or
yeah,
whatever it was,
yeah.
trying to do that and taking equity out of it. Like it is going to be difficult. I'm going to encourage that people think about like doing a survey and checking in with your employees, like figuring out where are your employees and trying to figure out how you can best support people within your four walls. Like start with the things that you can control, and go back to refer to your organization's mission and vision statements to make sure that there's still alignment there, because I think that within a majority of organizations, and I can't say all, but when things get a little bumpy, it's always it's a good time to look back and see what we were rallying around in the first place, whether it's, you know, feeding people in America or coming out with the fastest, best, most efficient flight, whatever it is. Find something to rally behind because this is really scary of trying to figure out what you can believe in or where you're supposed to go.
Well, and I think, you were mentioning ERGs earlier, and I think that's one of the pieces that, ERGs are being dismantled or being questioned. So even being able to bring together groups in an informal setting and, allowing folks to say, how can I just have a conversation and providing that, sense of community and platform for sharing their experiences and resources. So, like you said, whether that's a survey or just having some informal conversations, I think that's always critical is letting folks talk about it, but also, I'm on the both sides of that because I also worry that like if it's not monitored, if it's not facilitated the right way, it can go sideways. So, giving people those spaces where they can share community and share, just hey, we're all in this together, I think is a huge piece.
Right. I do think, you know, the thing that is really interesting, like, and why it's like I don't know what the answer is like even when we looked back at affirmative action in the Supreme Court when we were looking at schools, we already knew that the largest group that benefits from that were white women, and then it's like second are white men. And it's the same when you like the Pew Research Center did things looking at the DEI movement, and it was the same thing. Like if we're looking at it from straight, let's look at our DEI policies and who it's benefiting and how it's not reverse discrimination. It's still discrimination. It's still discrimination
Yeah.
is the problem. I just get worried if nobody's regulating on just what the overall impact is. And because it doesn't look like people are connecting those dots, and trying to figure out how this is impacted, because it's like Jenga, like they're just pulling out a block without any thought to how this is gonna, just the whole thing's gonna like tumble. I mean, folks, like right now we're in February.
It's February. It's and like not even like we're not even a month in to
No.
this administration.
Mm-mm.
And again, it's the chaos. So, the other thing that I will say is, reaching out to those policymakers, participating in any type of public forum that you can, reaching out and looking at the data that like the ACLU or the American Civil Liberties Union is putting out on some of these executive orders, reaching out to, professionals. And again, Jackye, I know you said already, not SHRM, but there's a lot of good, places that you can look. What is that newsletter that new Jackye Clayton just started putting out?
Oh, I know, right? Cute. It's called the
What?
People Puzzles Collective. Oh, thanks.
Oh, hey.
Mhm.
So
Um,
if you haven't signed up for that newsletter, that's a great place to get some good information. So,
great tips.
soft plug. That was a soft
I
plug for
liked it. That was
you. Yeah,
good.
that's good.
That was good.
Um, and then also, I think there are still a lot of DEI consultants out there that are, right now trying to help. Like I said, Scott was one of the folks that we spoke to just last week that, will be on the episode prior to this one. And, he has a lot of contacts. We have a lot of contacts. So if there is someone that you're just saying, I don't know what to do with this executive order, or I don't know how to think about this for my organization, reach out to us because we can definitely point you in the right direction if we can't help ourselves. We can definitely get you to the right people. But it's also, how do we continue to create, at the end of the day, places where people feel safe?
It's just not going to be in the United States for the next 4 years. I'm sorry. It's
Yeah,
just not. I mean, you can't, when we have people that were not elected that are responsible and have their hands in so many different things, that's the big fear, right? Like, that's the thing that would never happen. Where previously you might say, oh, well, the people have spoken. Not exactly. Um,
right.
I think in this case, even if you supported some of the core beliefs that you thought that we're getting, didn't realize everything that was going to be a part of, and will give people a little bit of grace, very sliver hair fraction of grace
Right.
about the things that they may not know.
But I think that's the other part too, is that it's this, yes, we'll give you a sliver of grace because you were bamboozled.
Run amok, led astray.
Yeah. And you
Like,
bought it hook, line, and sinker. And now you're like, oh, wait, me too. I'm also going to be impacted by these crazy things that he talked about during the campaign. Yeah.
I mean, but this is the stuff that they've been, that's the part that is so painful to watch. All
Yes.
of these freaking videos of people saying, oh, that's not what I voted for. I voted for this. No, you did not.
No, you did not.
Gladys, when
But
you made that vote, you also said you didn't want a job, Gladys.
right. Well,
Like,
there was a teacher and, they're talking about, oh, well, he's dismantling the Department of Education. And, that means that my school won't get any federal funding anymore. And it was like, so when he said, I'm
right,
going to dismantle the Department of Education, what part of that was unclear?
right,
Did you think he was kidding? Did you think he was just making that up? And I,
right.
and I know that that's what we've heard for so long is that, oh, he just says stuff. He doesn't really mean it. That's not what he meant. That's not
But
what,
why would you vote for somebody that you don't think you can trust?
because he's great, Jackie. He's the best
Stop.
thing.
No, that
No.
is not what great looks like.
No, it isn't. It isn't at all. But I think, the piece that it does give me hope is that at the end of the day, there are still a lot of people focused on this work and doing this work and understanding that inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, these are all very, very critical things and they're vital to every organization. And, when we think about this, and, we've said this, I think, for the last, I don't know how many episodes, but go out and read some of these executive orders. Go out and read what is happening with this dismantling, with the Doge and what they're doing and how they're thinking about things because it's going to get worse, people. Like the part that scares me is, or not, I won't say, there's so many things that scare me, but one that is like imminent to me is I'm waiting for cuts to like retirement programs for folks who have served in federal roles because he's already doing that in that he's going to buy out people. Well, sure, no, you're not. You're just going to say that and then not actually follow through. But it's also the what's going to happen to some of these folks that are now retired that have no income coming in or don't have a retirement anymore or don't have social security anymore or whatever that might be. So, but we remain hopeful. We're trying.
Is that the word? I think we remain steadfast in our belief that there are going to be people doing the work because it shouldn't have made much of a difference to most people's in theory.
Yeah.
It should not have done that. But and I just want people to recognize that there are people who think that this somehow was about race and gender, but it wasn't. It was about safety and the freedom to be able to just do your job and not have this piece over. That's one fact. And so I would check into your, teammates. I don't expect, to ask, you don't have to ask people how they are feeling, but be supportive and be a light when there is that darkness. And while you're looking things up to try to educate yourself, also go backwards to see why these laws were put in place in the first place.
Oh, 1 million. I mean, I think that's a huge one, Jackie. That like folks really do need to do that. I think that's one of the things that people are forgetting. Like, I mean, when we talked about NOSHA, I think people have forgotten, why did all this happen?
Right.
Why did we start to unionize? Why did we start to do all these things? And why does it matter today in 2025? So, um, yeah, looking to each other, looking and doing our research, really making sure that we're also thinking about just our personal values and our personal ethics and how we're upholding that in the workplace, I think is also critical. So, this is Katee Van Horn.
And this is Jackie. Thank you for joining us today on the Inclusive AF podcast. We hope that this helps give you a little bit of clarity. Maybe you feel a little bit more empowered through these challenging times. And remember, inclusivity starts with each of us, and together we can make a difference. Oh,
100%.
we're going to be all right.
It's going to be all right.
It's going to be all right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.